The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew. Glory to you, Lord Christ. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men or magi from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." And when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. The gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. You may not know this today, but you were invited here. Did you realize that? Some of you say, "No, I just sort of came on my own." Some of you are like, "Well, I was invited, and by that means I was strong-armed into a car and forced to come in the building." That's sometimes how it feels when you're a little younger when you're going to church. But let me make it clear, you were invited, and that's important. This passage is primarily about an invitation and how we respond to that invitation. Because that makes all the difference, is how we respond. And I'm going to share with you today 3 of my best invitations that I received, right? And I know we got a lot of invitations, didn't we? We just came off the Christmas party season, right? And so we get a lot of invitations, and we don't always know what to do with all those invitations. I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty bad sometimes about even opening my invitations that I get, and I'm even worse about RSVPing or responding to those invitations. But they come nonetheless. I'm going to begin with my 3rd best ever invitation. I'd gone on a date with a beautiful young lady when I was in college. It was our 2nd date, and so I decided to up my game and go somewhere fancy, so we went bowling. I'm going to be honest, this is a little pro tip. If you want to know who you're dating, take them bowling. You're going to find a lot out about how they do when they fail, how they do when they succeed, how competitive they are, and these are important things. And so I get on this date, and we're just having an offhand discussion, and we start talking about dancing. And I say, I love to dance, but my problem is I can never find the right shoes to dance in. And then I'm sitting there in these bowling shoes, and they're so slick. And I'm like, do you know that the perfect shoes for dancing would be bowling shoes? I just say this, it's just sort of a throwaway comment in the midst of this date and this conversation in a bowling alley. And so we leave, and we go back to the car, and then all of a sudden she says, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot something. I think I left my wallet back in the bowling alley." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great. Do you want me to go shut?" No, I'm just going to go back and get it. I didn't think anything of it. Got in the car. Great date. 4 days later, I'm in the commons room in my dorm. And then another young lady walks in, and she is wearing a delivery costume, and she has a box, and she comes in. And by the way, this young lady has one of the best voices in the planet. Matter of fact, even now, she is a voice therapist at Vanderbilt University. She trains and cares for some of the best vocalists in the United States. She walks in here, and I just knew her barely, and she starts singing to me. And I'm like, are you singing to me? She starts singing to me, and it's a song that has been created that is an invitation to a sorority semi-formal. And I'm like, well, what's the box? And she's like, you got to open it to understand. And I opened the box. And inside of the box are the bowling shoes that I had worn on that second date. You see, the invitation was from that young lady who I went bowling with, and she wanted to make sure that I was going to be in great dancing form. So when she went back in, she stole those shoes. She straight stole them. And I still have those bowling shoes. That's my third best invitation. But I'm going to be honest, it's not as cool as the invitation that these three wise men, and by the way, I'm joking, it's not three. We sing this song, We Three Kings of Orient Are. One, we don't know that they were kings, and we don't know that there were three of them. We make that assumption because of the gold, the frankincense, and the myrrh. But we know that there's at least two. But there could be as many as 5, 10, 15. This is a community of people who traveled probably from Asia, Persia, because they had seen something. They received an invitation. And you know what it was? They were searching for truth. They were searching for something that mattered, and they just looked up into the night sky. And they saw something different there. They saw a light that they had never seen before. Now, you think it was pretty cool that somebody went in and stole some shoes to get me to go to a semi-formal with them? Let me tell you what the God of the universe did. He aligned the universe in just such a way that these people who were somewhere in Asia and Persia could, at that very moment that Jesus was being born, could see those lights and could follow them. He legitimately moved planets, stars, solar systems, so that people could see what was going on. But let me tell you something. The only people that saw the invitation were the people that were looking. If you're not looking for it, you'll miss it. But they were hungry for truth. This is the reality, right? Like, the reality is, if you're looking for the invitation, you'll find it almost every time. The question is, why didn't all these people in and around Jerusalem figure it out and do the same thing? They weren't looking for the invitation. And here's the thing. These wise men, these magi, they were the least likely to receive they were not Jewish. They were foreigners. They didn't know anything about the history of these people. They didn't know anything about Messiah. They just looked up and saw that a king was coming. And they said, I want to be a part of that. Let me tell you something. My goal for you is that you'll accept the invitation. The God of the universe he's showing you something. Accept the invitation and follow where he's headed. They didn't decide where they were going. They were just following the light in this season. Let me tell you something. If you RSVP to something and then you show up to the wrong location, you didn't show up. You didn't make it to the party. If you RSVP and then you say, well, I'm going to party here at home by myself, you missed it. You missed the opportunity. Accepting the invite means we follow the light. Right? That's what we've got to do. We've got to walk towards it. And that may seem, can you imagine how dumb these people looked to all the other people around them? Because let me tell you, I don't know about anything, but they must have had some money. These guys have taken off for 6 or 7 months to travel around a very dangerous and arid part of the Middle East. And they're not from there, right? They had a little bit of money. And people were like, you're wasting your money and your time and your energy on all this foolishness. But they had seen the invitation and they were hungry for truth. So they followed. And if you're going to accept the invitation, you know what? You're going to have to follow. You're going to have to show up to the right party. Well, there's another thing that you have to do. By the way, when you accept an invite, that means you have to sometimes reject another invitation. You can't be at 2 parties at the same time. Have you figured that out yet? I know my wife thinks that's not true. She thinks we can say yes to 7 parties that are between 6 and 8 on the same night. She believes. But the reality is, it never works. And it never will. You see, in this situation, the wise men come into the court of Herod, and they think, well, Herod, you should be interested in this, right? And he says, Herod, do you know where this new king is? And Herod hears that and says, uh-oh. New king? I'm the king. I'm in charge. You see, accepting an invitation to follow the true and living king and God means that all of the pretenders, you have to reject their invitation. Herod thinks he's the king of the Jews. He thinks he exercises authority. But that's not real. Now, here's what I got to say. We all want to pretend we're the wise man, but let's be very clear. Most of us are a little bit more like Herod, right? We have our own little kingdoms. We have our own little thrones that we've made for ourselves. We don't want to follow the light. We don't want to go and worship another king. We want to maintain our thraldom, right? We want to maintain our power and our control. But here's the bad news. There's only one king. There's only one real king. And so if we're going to accept him, if we're going to receive what he has, if we're going to enter into the party, we have to say no to that other party. And have you ever noticed Herod can't? Herod, by the way, is a puppet king of the Roman government. He doesn't, the only power he has is the power that he's been given. But isn't it crazy how much we'll fight for the small powers that we have? Even when they're killing us. Even when they're preventing us from entering in the party that would give us life and hope and peace. So accept the invite, but reject the invitation of those false rulers that would invite us in. And here's another one. And this is, I'm speaking for myself. I want you to accept the invite, and I want you to get excited about it. We live in a culture that is kind of cynical. Can we all admit that? We tamp down any excitement that we have about anything, and you know why we do that? We're like, oh, if I get too excited, it's going to ruin the whole thing. I'm going to jinx it. You know, I mean, we do that. But the question becomes, what do you see when you look at these wise men? The star moves and they go. They come to the house and they see this little baby, and it's just like joy. So much joy, so much excitement. You couldn't have slapped them across the face and got the smile off of it. That's how excited they were. The question is, what do we get excited about? Sports sometimes. But I'm going to be honest, the same things that plague our joy in sports plague our joy everywhere else. Like, well, I really want to be excited about this game, but I'm pretty sure my squad's going to lose. Right? I know, there are Clemson and South Carolina fans in here who like begrudgingly admit, depending on how they did their last week, oh, I knew it would happen. I knew we would lose. Didn't want to get my hopes up. Get excited. And now I want to tell you about the second best invitation I ever got. It was my senior year of college, and I'd gotten back to school, and we had this newfangled thing, guys, called email. Some of the older people here will remember that when email first came out, people were actually excited to read emails. You remember those days? Like, you were paying to dial in so that your email would come, and you were excited about it. Now, our inboxes have 30,000 email messages that we never read, look at, and we do everything we can to avoid it. But then it was exciting. And in my inbox, an email from a beautiful young lady, a friend of mine, right? And in it, it's just like, hey, don't know if you're back to campus yet. Great to talk to you this summer. We should grab dinner. Now, here's me. I'm going to be honest. Remember that excitement piece? I usually tamped my excitement and expectations about anything down. And I'm going to be honest. I had a pretty low view of myself in these situations. My assumption was, in that conversation was, I'm in the friend zone. We know what that means, right? I'm a good buddy. They want to get together and grab a burger. and hang out and find out and catch up and see what's going on. And that's what I understood it to be. You know, like it's an email. And so I'll just go, you know, so we set up a time, and my plan was, hey, we'll go down to Burger King on campus, right? Because that's where my expectations were. I was afraid to be excited about this thing. I was like, oh man, I think she's got a boyfriend. I think all this stuff's going on, all this other stuff. So either way, the time comes, and I show up at her dorm room, knock on the door. The door opens up, and there she is, and there are 3 of her friends doing her hair. She is dressed in a red shirt and a plaid red, like, skirt. And let me describe you how I'm dressed. I'm wearing a sleeveless Cindy Brady t-shirt and a pair of overalls with only one of the galluses hooked. And then I realized I might have misread this invitation altogether. And then I played it off, right? I'm like, oh, you know, I was just stopping by to see what time. And next thing, I'm running to my dorm. And I'm trying to find something that doesn't smell like rotten meat and isn't so creased up that it looked like it didn't live underneath a mattress for a couple of years. But that was an incredible invitation. And then I upgraded. I went to like an Applebee's, next level up. And then somewhere about 3 sentences in, she drops, oh, by the way, you know, my boyfriend and I, we broke up at the beginning of the summer. And then I'm like, game on. Now, that young lady I'm talking about, it turns out I've been married to now for almost 25 years. Those were incredible invitations. Incredible, right? But let me tell you, in that story, I wasn't prepared. I didn't understand the invitation that was given to me, and I showed up looking like a hobo, right? I was not prepared. But look at the wise men. When you accept the invitation, you got to show up prepared. And what do they show up with? Gold and frankincense and myrrh. Now, did you hear in Isaiah 60? God had been saying since the beginning of time, the people who were going to identify were going to show up with gold and frankincense and good news. And this is a fulfillment of that, but do we know what those represent? Gold, riches, our treasures. We better show up when we answer that invitation to give our treasures. What do we have that we value? They valued that gold, and they gave it to the king. What about frankincense? Do you know what frankincense is? We still use frankincense here at this church. When you are anointed with oil on your head, one of the major ingredients that makes that aromatic is that expensive frankincense. And matter of fact, that's the central thing. It was oil that was used to anoint kings and prophets and priests. Oil was a representation of your talents and your gifts that had come from God. And they said, you know what? I'm going to give you that too. What about the myrrh? You know what myrrh is primarily used for? Embalming. Embalming. We sing it in that song, We Three Kings. Myrrh, the bitter perfume. It pleads a life of lingering doom. It's a picture that Jesus will die for us. But here's the thing. It's also a picture of time. Guess what, guys? Everybody in this room? Tick-tock. We've got a limited amount of time here on this earth. The myrrh they were giving was a representation of what we do between now and death. So my question is, if you accept the invitation, are you ready to show up dressed, ready? Hope you are. Finally, and these are all details embedded in this story we've heard, but something it says is the Lord came to them in a dream and they returned home a different way. You know that is the pattern in the Bible? When you read in Ezekiel and when it describes the temple, you know that there's one door you come in, but you leave through a different door. It is a visual representation that we are changed by our acceptance of the invitation. We are different. Those wise men couldn't go back and tell Herod. They knew what he was up to. He wanted to control Jesus. He wanted to destroy Jesus. so he could keep his own little kingdom. They didn't desire that. They just wanted to worship him. And let me tell you something. If you are a wise person today and you enter this place and you worship him, you're going to leave changed. You're going to leave transformed. That is the nature of what it means to come into his presence and to accept that invitation. Okay, so you heard the third and the second, and now let me tell you the first, the best invitation I ever received. And this may not surprise you because it's the same invitation that the wise men, and it's an invitation I offer to you today. One day, a long, long time ago, a group of people, a community of people just like this, who had seen the glory, as we said in Isaiah 60. They had seen the light. It had shone upon them, and they were reflecting that glory. They came and they stood up in front of a room and they said, hey, this invitation's for you. But I'm nobody. It's for you. He is inviting you to his table. He is inviting you to his presence. He is inviting you to all the things that you cannot get for yourself. A way, a truth, a life. He is inviting you so that you can be made whole from your sins, whole from your brokenness. He is inviting you. And they said it in very, very simple ways. And they said, all you got to do is follow the light. All you got to do is be humble enough to lay down your kingdom, to reject your own kingdom, and to receive his, and to just lay every gift you have at his feet. He can be trusted. And then go home different. And that is the exact invitation that he has called his people who reflect his light and his glory to continue to offer. That's exactly why you're here today. We didn't invite you. He invited you. And I don't know the circumstances. I don't know the planets that he had to move to get you here. But he did. And you're here. And look at you. You're batting 1,000 in 2024. I want you to look at everybody you meet this week and say, you know what, man, I've been to church every Sunday in 2024. You know, I mean, just ham it up. Let them know. Get excited because you were invited. And here's the deal. And this is where we're moving in response. One, have you responded yet to the invitation? Have you personally said, you know what? I need to reject some RSVPs that I've made to some particular parties and some particular things. And I need to accept your invitation. That's number one. But the second one, and it relates, all of you guys got a little card. Little 3x5 card. You also have pens and other things in your thing. So here's what I want you to do. One of the key things in this season of Jesus manifesting was he wants us to reflect his light and to invite people in. So here's what I want us to do. I want you to just take a minute. And you can do this as well during our offertory time because people may come to you. And by the way, this doesn't always make sense. Sometimes I close my eyes and people just come to my mind. Sometimes friends locally, sometimes friends far away. And I'm like, I wonder why they came to mind. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll just text them or I'll call them. But here's what I want you to do. As you prayerfully consider, who do I want to be God's emissary to? Who do I want to make an invite? And it might even be a cruddy invite, but an invite nonetheless. Who are people that I say, I want to see them here with me? I want to see them here. I want to see him next to me in a pew. I want to hear him singing off key. Right? And I want you to write those names down on that card. Now, you're not going to give that to us today. I want you to write the names down, and I want you to fold it, and I want you to keep it in your pocket, in your Bible, in your wallet. And I want you to just say, whenever you see that thing, I want you to pray for those people. And then when you see it, say, oh, maybe I should just ask them. Ask them to what? I don't know. Ask them to come to church. We have Alpha starting in a couple of weeks, and that's a place where we can ask big questions, where they can have freedom to come in and learn and just search for the truth and follow the light. Invite them. Don't say no for them. God never says no for anyone. This is the incredible thing about him. He says, the invitation's here. Come on in. He's not going to force anybody, but the invitation is there. So you are invited today.
We pray you've been edified by this presentation. You have been listening to the teaching ministry of the Abbey at Pawleys Island, South Carolina. For more information on the Abbey at Pawleys Island Church or for more audio, please visit our website at theabbeypawleysisland.com.